At some point in the last few years, a strange image began circulating on Facebook. It showed a figure of Jesus rendered entirely out of shrimp. The anatomy was wrong, the proportions were unsettling. And beneath it, hundreds of thousands of people had typed a single word, Amen. That image was not made by a person. If you have older relatives who use Facebook, you probably know what I'm talking about. They're not gullible, they're not foolish, they're just playing a game whose rules changed without anyone telling them. And what's worth saying out loud is this: it wasn't an accident, it was a business model. The image was produced automatically, at near zero cost, by an AI image generator, posted by an account whose sole purpose was to harvest engagement. Facebook's algorithm identified it as high-performing content and distributed it far beyond the page's existing followers, pushing it into the feed of users who had never asked to see it. According to a 2024 investigation by 404 Media and a separate analysis in Rolling Stone, this is not an isolated incident, it is a repeatable, documented pattern. The platform's own systems actively amplify AI-generated imagery, routing users who engage with it toward websites packed with advertising. And honestly, this is the part I want you to pay attention to. The engagement is the product, the click is the transaction. Stanford's REAP research program found that during the third quarter of 2023, a single AI-generated image ranked among the top 20 most viewed pieces of content on the entire platform, accumulating 40 million views, more than the combined viewership of most primetime television broadcasts in the United States. 40 million people, one AI image, one algorithm. What is notable here is not the absurdity of the image itself. What is notable is the system that decided 40 million people should see it. That decision was not made by an editor, a curator, or a human being. It was made by an algorithm optimizing for one variable, engagement. And somewhere in that optimization, the distinction between content that is meaningful and content that merely triggers a reflexive response, a share, a comment, and an amen ceased to matter. One user on Reddit put it plainly: I've noticed a lot of older relatives sharing and engaging with AI-generated content over the past couple of months. They're just not in the habit of questioning whether an image is real or not. The problem isn't that people are naive. The problem is that the system is designed to look real. This video is about that system, what the internet has become, how it got there, and most importantly, why the forces driving it have no natural incentive to stop. But why does it spread so fast? To understand what is actually happening to the internet, it helps to start with a theory that most people dismissed and probably shouldn't have. In January 2021, a user on a small online forum called Agora Road's Macintosh Cafe posted a thread titled "Dead Internet Theory. Most of the internet is fake." The conspiratorial version, a coordinated, top-down replacement of human activity with bots, was wrong, and journalists were right to push back on it. But within that fringe argument lived a more modest claim, one that was not conspiratorial at all, one that turns out to be supported by data. The modest claim, a large and growing share of what moves across the internet is not generated by human beings. In 2016, the cybersecurity firm Imperva published its annual bot traffic report. Its headline finding was that bot activity accounted for 51.8% of all online traffic that year, meaning that for the first time on record, automated requests outnumbered human ones on the global web. You might be thinking, okay, but that was 2016. Surely it's better now. Nearly a decade later, Imperva's 2025 Bad Bot report arrived at a figure that was almost identical. 51% of all web traffic automated bad bots. Those involved in fraud, scraping, and account takeover, representing 37% on their own. The problem had not been solved, it had simply been normalized. The internet isn't mostly human. It hasn't been for years. When Caitlin Tiffany wrote about the dead internet theory for The Atlantic, she framed it as wrong, but feels true. That phrase turned out to be more instructive than it appeared. The strong version, the conspiracy, remains unsupported. The weak version, that most internet activity is no longer human in origin, has quietly become the measurable reality. That is where this story begins. Not with a conspiracy, with a measurement. What we are dealing with is not the product of a single cause. It is the result of three forces that matured on roughly the same timeline and now reinforce one another in ways that are structurally difficult to reverse. Force 1. Corrupted feedback signals. Recommendation algorithms are trained on engagement signals: clicks, shares, time spent, comments. When a meaningful share of those signals is generated by bots rather than real humans, the algorithm receives a corrupted input. Think of it like audio feedback, the kind where a microphone picks up its own output from a speaker, and the loop keeps amplifying until it becomes unbearable noise. The algorithm learns to surface content that bots engage with, which shapes what real users are shown, which shapes how real users behave, which feeds back into the algorithm's next round of learning. There is no self-correcting mechanism built into it. It simply observes what performed well and optimizes for more. Force 2, the collapse of production costs. This one has a precise date. In July 2022, Midjourney entered open beta, high-quality AI image generation, accessible to anyone with an internet connection. 1 month later, Stability AI released Stable Diffusion as an open-source model. And in November 2022, OpenAI released ChatGPT, making large language model output a default tool for hundreds of millions of people within weeks. Here's what that means in plain numbers. Using current API pricing, generating 10,000 text articles costs roughly $20. 10,000 AI images at low quality around $100. A few dozen dollars. That is the cost of an internet content factory now, and you only need a small number of clicks to break even. The problem isn't that AI is powerful. The problem is that it's cheap. There's a longer-term consequence researchers have begun documenting. A 2023 paper demonstrated formally that when AI models are trained on data produced by other AI models, the resulting systems progressively lose fidelity to human reality. Think of it like repeatedly photocopying a photocopy. Each generation, the image gets a little more blurred, a little further from the original. As the public web becomes saturated with synthetic material, future AI training datasets will contain more of it, and the models trained on those datasets will drift further from ground truth with each successive generation. The pipeline for improving AI quality may itself be degrading. Force 3, the distribution engine. In June 2022, Facebook announced a pivot toward a TikTok-style recommendation model. Feeds no longer primarily populated by accounts you follow, but by content the algorithm predicts will generate engagement, regardless of origin. The practical effect dramatically expanded reach for any content that triggers a fast emotional response, which is precisely what high-volume, low-cost AI content is designed to produce. And when production is cheap enough, the most valuable thing becomes attention. The most clarifying way to understand what has happened to the internet is not as a cultural or technological problem. It's an economic one. This is not a conspiracy, it's a market. The math is simple. It costs almost nothing to produce content at scale. Platforms distribute it for free based on engagement. Even a small conversion rate, applied at sufficient volume, generates meaningful revenue. Each iteration requires no additional human labor. The loop runs on its own. Platforms have, in some cases, made this even more direct. X, formerly Twitter, restructured its creator monetization to pay, based specifically on engagement from other premium subscribers, a direct financial incentive for the kind of content most likely to provoke rapid response, controversy, outrage, reply bait. And Facebook wasn't the only place this played out. Sports Illustrated published product reviews attributed to authors whose photographs appeared AI-generated and whose biographical details could not be verified. CNET published AI-written articles with no disclosure to readers. More than 53% of them required corrections. Google's AI overviews suggested adding glue to pizza and eating rocks for minerals because the system processed satirical content without any mechanism for identifying irony. It wasn't one platform, it wasn't one incident. It was everywhere, like a flood coming from every direction at once. The issue isn't that AI makes mistakes. The issue is that no one was checking. But beyond individual errors, there is something more structural happening. Algorithms are not neutral infrastructure. They are policy decisions rendered in code, and they can be changed at any time by whoever controls the underlying system, for whatever reason they choose. This is the part that concerns me most, and I say that having spent a long time looking at this. In early 2023, Platformer reported that during the Super Bowl, engineers at X observed that a post by President Biden was receiving more views than a post by Elon Musk, who had acquired the company 4 months earlier. According to internal documents and employee interviews, engineers were instructed to build a system ensuring Musk's post appeared at the top of every follower's feed, a manual override, executed because of an unfavorable engagement comparison. The algorithm is not a force of nature, it's a decision. Meta's conduct during the same period offers a parallel. In January 2025, The Guardian reported that Meta had been operating AI-generated persona accounts on Instagram and Facebook, synthetic profiles presenting themselves as real users, complete with interests, biographical details, and the ability to hold conversations. Users reportedly could not block them through standard controls. The accounts were removed only after public pressure became too costly to ignore. The writer Cory Doctorow called this pattern enshittification. Platforms first genuinely serve users to build an audience, then shift towards serving advertisers at users' expense, then extract maximum value from both until the platform degrades. What generative AI introduces into this cycle is an acceleration mechanism. If filling a feed with content costs near zero, platforms can maintain the appearance of a healthy, active network while hollowing out the human activity underneath. One Reddit user wrote, "More like drive-away engagement. Why would I go to a site I expect to see my friends' updates and see AI bullshit?" That reaction doesn't show up in any engagement dashboard, but it's real, and it compounds. So where does this leave us? There are 3 trajectories. They're not mutually exclusive. More than one is already unfolding, simultaneously. The first, provenance and verification layers, cryptographic watermarking, and content authentication standards that would let a reader verify whether content is human or AI generated. These systems exist in prototype form. Their effectiveness depends entirely on whether platforms adopt them. The history of voluntary technical standards on the internet does not provide much basis for optimism. Platforms adopt standards when it is commercially in their interest. When it is not, they don't. The second is already underway. In July 2024, Reddit began blocking the crawlers of major search engines and AI training operations, with exceptions only for paid licensing partners. As the open web fills with synthetic content, the forums and communities where human beings still argue, question, correct one another, and speak from direct experience become scarce and therefore economically valuable. What was once freely accessible becomes a licensed asset. At some point in the not distant future, the ability to read what real people actually think may carry a price tag. The third carries the longest-term consequences. As the web becomes saturated with AI-generated material, the datasets used to train the next generation of models will contain increasing proportions of synthetic content. Each generation drifts further from human reality. The web fills with content trained on content trained on content. Each layer a little further removed from anything a human being actually thought, experienced, or believed. You might think this is overstated. I understand. I thought so too, for a while. But consider, the FTC documented AI voice cloning being used to call elderly parents, replicate the voice of their child, and ask for money. Not a theoretical risk, a documented fraud vector, active now, at scale. The internet was built on assumptions that have quietly stopped being true. That most of what you read was written by someone, that most accounts belong to people, that engagement signals reflect what human beings actually care about. Those assumptions have been eroding for nearly a decade. What is new is not the erosion, it is the pace. And the fact that the economic machinery driving it has never been cheaper to operate or more profitable to run. The question is simple. If most of what moves across the internet is no longer produced by human beings, no longer engaged with by human beings, and no longer shaped by human preferences, what precisely is it that we have all been spending our time inside? And what does it mean that we are only now beginning to ask?